how is someone like you who's been in the YouTube fitness game for so long had like kept up the motivation to keep doing it? Because, you know, YouTube is a grind for sure. And what's the driving force that keeps you going for so many years?
The driving force is I love this shit. Plus, I like helping people. I've always been passionate about that since a young age. I was always that dude who wanted to offer a little bit more to my peers or those that were close to me. And when I started really getting into fitness, I found it so transformative in my own life that I just had to bring it back. And the fact that, first of all, I'm always trying to level up my own physique, and I'm constantly reading, looking at what the best guys have to offer. I just can't not share that with my audience. Mm-hmm. So the fact that I'm constantly leveling up, it can't be a selfish pursuit. I got to level up my audience as well. So there's not much to say other than the fact that it comes from the heart, and with passion, it's effortless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're documenting your own self-development or development in physical fitness, and you feel like it's your duty to share that. I can't remember the exact quote, but I can't remember. Like the whole concept is you being who you wish you had when you were younger.
Right.
You know, like maybe you wish you had an Alpha Destiny when you first got into training.
Well, that's the thing. I started off my channel at a very young age, and I created the name Alpha Destiny because we're all trying to pursue our own Alpha Destiny. It's not that I've already reached destiny. We're just in the pursuit of it. And so striving for excellence, never being content with mediocrity is key. And just knowing that we're capable of more. Once you accept that, you might as well just go for it.
Absolutely. Do you ever, this is interesting, but do you ever consider like stepping out of the lane of fitness, like when it comes to self-development and stuff like that? Do you ever, because this, you know, like people in the past, like let's say Elliot Hulse, for example, he kind of like was doing the fitness thing, but then people were asking him questions. You know, if someone trusts you, if you teach someone how to get strong and they feel more confident, they might come with you, come with questions to you about women or life in general. Have you ever kind of stepped out of the fitness lane?
Well, I've stepped out a bit when I was younger, but that was coming from a place of ego and probably inexperience as well in some respects. Okay. So I said some dumb stuff, and that's all documented, of course. But moving forward, I feel like I have grown, and there is a lot of information to offer. But I don't know if I would do that on my main fitness channel, simply because I'd rather stay in my lane to what I consider to be an expert in. Not to toot my own horn, but I've mastered the craft. I put in my over 10K hours. This is what I do professionally. I can't say the same for being a life coach, even though I believe my advice will be beneficial. I've done a lot of research. I read a lot of podcasts, and you're doing good work as well, just to say. But if I'm going to answer, probably be privately through DMs or whatnot, or in a Q&A type format. If someone does a super chat, they're like, yo, what's your opinion on Meditations by Marcus Aurelius? I'll be like, okay, now we can start talking. You know? But mixing work with, you know, that field, I'm not sure if I would do that. But it is tempting. But I know that also some opinions on masculinity, for example, in this day and age, could be rejected, or it can divide your audience. And that's the last thing I want to do. Same thing with politics or stuff like that.
That's a tough thing, you know, especially if you have controversial opinions. Which it's not really hard to have a controversial opinion these days, for sure.
Well, especially look, most fitness influencers, they're wired in a similar way. Let me just put it like that.
What do you mean by that exactly?
Like our views don't necessarily align with what the mainstream say. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah,
fair enough. We won't get into it. I don't want to get you canceled. So to take it back to the you know, you just said alluded to the fact that you might have said things in the past that are documented that you don't necessarily agree with anymore. And I'm curious, you know, I can only imagine, I'm 29, and I can only imagine if I don't know the exact age. Were you like 17 when you hopped on YouTube?
I was.
Yeah, that's dude. And I was, like, I'm grateful to God that I never stepped in like in the public stage at that age, because it would, to me personally, like the last you know, 2 years ago, I'm embarrassed by who I was 2 years ago, you know, because I try to grow as much as I can. And I'm learning new things.
Yeah.
And when your growth and maturation is in the public eye, that's, you know, like you kind of document your fuck ups in a way. I'm not saying you fucked up. I'm just saying in general, as a person who's growing in the public eye, and you are in a sense a YouTube celebrity in this niche for sure, right? You have a lot of attention. So I'm curious, do you ever go back to some of your older videos and like purge them, or you just leave everything up?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I appreciate you saying that, and it's definitely 100% true, man. I do look back at some of my older content because it's recommended on the sidebar. So I could be watching, because I'll review my own content, you know, and I'll see it and I click on it, and the way I speak, look at the camera, deliver my points, I'm like, holy fuck, is this the same person? And I'm amazed at how much of an absolute moron I was, you know, not necessarily with intelligence. I feel like I've always been up there, but the way I acted was horrible. And it's like you said, when you're young, you're going to make mistakes. And it just sucks that I had to document it like that. But it is what it is. You grow through that experience. And I have to say that when all that came out, where people were, you know, putting my fuck ups on blast, it actually did me good. Because I got to see everything, all my little mistakes, and know that I was no longer in that position. It actually was refreshing. So I'm happy that the videos are laid out, you know, and I still have most of them up. Some I got rid, not because I'm ashamed, but because the YouTube algorithm doesn't like it. And if I want stuff to be recommended, I'd rather it be the best quality stuff, especially if the info is outdated. But it's always cool to, when you're on the journey of self-development, you reflect, because you see how far you've come and how much more there is to grow. And heck, man, when you're like a late teenager or early 20s, you're really lacking a lot of life experience. Even if you think you know what's up, I promise you, you don't. Like, you can read all the books in the world. You really have to be in the trenches for certain things.
Yeah, I feel like the older I get and the wiser I become, the more I don't know. Even with health and fitness, I remember a few years back when I had just a sliver of knowledge. I thought I knew everything. Yeah. And now the more I know, I'm just humbled by the fact that, wow, there's so much more to learn. So that's interesting.
It's amazing. Sorry to cut you off, but
no worries.
Life will humble you, and it's like the Dunning-Kruger effect. Everybody thinks they're experts at stuff when they first get into it, but then the more they acquire knowledge on that subject, they're like, wow, this is literally just scratching the surface. And there's hours and hours more, months of content to devour. And years later, if I go back to fitness, it's the same thing. I'm always learning. You watch my videos from 2019 till now, it's not the same stuff, you know, because when you have an eye to learn, your life is just going to change constantly.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned something before where you said people were kind of exposing your fuck ups or maybe reacting to you. I haven't really seen too many videos like that. I think Greg Doucette has challenged you on some things and whatnot, but I'm kind of curious. One thing that that's left a bad taste in my mouth in general with the YouTube fitness community, whatever you want to call it right now. It's like not really a community. That's one thing. It's very like divided, and there's a lot of gossipy and passive aggressive behavior. And that's one thing where it's like, you know, there is a responsibility as an educator, someone who's looked up to in this field, to call out bullshit. But, you know, there's also these people that will call out coaches and try to stir up drama for clout and views. And there's a fine line. And I'm not saying anyone who reacts to a certain coach or uses someone's name is bad. You know, there's a lot of people that I respect who do that. But what is the fine line there? And what I personally don't like is when people don't really have an open discussion. Like, say if I disagreed with someone completely, it's like, why don't you have a podcast? Why don't you talk for an hour? Right? Instead of like, I'm going to make a YouTube video talking shit about you. You're going to make a YouTube video talking shit about me. That's like that.
It's true. Yeah, that would be the best way to resolve it. Like a man, one-on-one, let's do a live chat and be done
Yeah.
with it. But of course, when you respond in an edited fashion, you can kind of pre-script it and your arguments will be best laid out, or you can deliberately twist the arguments, and you can only do so many response videos. So if you do like one or two and you've made your point, usually people won't want to see a third segment, even though that could be the live chat where all the extra stuff was exposed. So going back to your question, where do you draw the line? I think it has to do with intent, in the sense that sometimes information is so bad that it just needs to be called out. Enough is enough. This is bullshit. Like, if you look at Jeffrey Verity Schofield, when he makes response videos, it's not for clout. It's because the person who's giving info is giving dangerous advice. And probably the worst offender right now would have to be Ryan Humiston. I'm just saying it bluntly. Like, absolute fucking garbage advice, in my opinion. And that's not how he built his physique. And he's misleading his viewers with this circus show that he puts on. And when Jeffrey comes in and says, hey, you're not going to get 19-inch lean arms, and this is not how you did it, and it's not realistic for your audience, it's because this guy's misleading people. Now, that's one video out of many. If a guy has 1,000 videos and like 100 of them are responses to people, he's not doing it for clout. But if someone is posting 3 to 4 times a week of this guy, that guy, then it's for a different purpose. They're not necessarily trying to help. They may claim that they're real, but they can always do it in a more tasteful way. For example, I made a segment recently on the basics and why you should keep doing them. That's not a direct response to any particular individual, though it's kind of a compilation of various points I've seen among people who try to stir up controversy. So let's say 3 guys made a video saying, don't use barbells. This is your alternatives. I'll pick a point. I'll pick apart those arguments, write them down, and I'll respond individually to those claims, but I'm not addressing an individual directly. And if someone so happens to recognize that, yeah, these are the arguments, sure, we can go there, but it doesn't have to hit that point. I don't need to use another man's name to grow my channel. And at the end of the day, what are you going to do when the drama disappears? Months or years later, you now have an empty video that people aren't going to watch, even though the information and criticisms could have been valid. So how about we address the themes instead of the people?
That's a great point. And that's how you should just navigate life in general, right? And if you're going to have a discussion with someone one-on-one, at least make it honorable, at least like do it in the public eye, like live stream or something like that, like have a debate that people can see rather than.
It's always cool to see. But like I said, most won't go down that path. But that's why guys like Vegan Gains, I can actually respect on that level, in the sense that he'll just say, yeah, let's do a live debate. And most people back out. So given the fact that the majority are not going to take on that challenge, I think it says a lot about our community. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, man. Well, let's dive into some training questions. I have one in particular that like, I know that this is actually something I discussed with Jeffrey on the last podcast I did, and I'd love to get your take on it. So I know you're familiar with, Coach Kassem from N1, Paul Carter, a lot of these guys that are very biomechanics focused. They kind of step away from the more traditional lifts, and they don't downright demonize them, but they definitely have like this new style of training. Yeah. And something that I was very interested in over the last year. And then there are the guys on the other side of the aisle, the barbell supremacists, the very minimalistic oriented people. And they think isolation movements or machines are for pussies or whatever. And I'm curious, what, in your opinion, what is the optimal balance between the tried and true basic compound lifts and the new biomechanics focused training?
Well, first of all, I think that learning about biomechanics is awesome, and I freaking love it. I've read some books now on the subject, and I've looked at most of N1's work among some other guys. Paul Carter, I'm a big fan, been following him for years, and it's just amazing content. Like, it's good to know how the human body functions and what you can do to bias certain tissues. So in terms of the exercises being offered and the reasonings for them, definitely on point. That said, you're right. They don't downplay the effectiveness of the tried and tested movements. So I'm not an extremist. I, of course, use barbells. That's the majority of my training. but I also focus on weighted calisthenics. And I'll be the first one to recommend accessories and isolation work, to the point where even some of my stuff has been controversial because I'm pro conjugate and I believe in movement variability. But someone who's only about like 100% basics, they might just do squat, bench, dead and call it a day. They'll demonize trap bar deads. They won't use the Swiss bar bench for some weird fucking reason, maybe because it's not specific enough to their comp bench. They won't do overhead press because the vertical movement pattern is not the same as a horizontal. I feel like those types of people are more so strength athletes, but the weak amateur powerlifters, because the ones that are about big stuff don't have enough time to talk smack. So the purists, I think Dr. Mike Kirstentel said it best, they're usually not that jacked. Maybe they ran a few cycles of starting strength or Mad Cals 5x5 or the Texas method, or they dived into a little bit of intermediate programming, but they never got beyond that point. And so they don't quite grasp what a long-term plateau can do. And the way you can overcome them is with different movements and superior programming, right? So I believe one should build their routine around the fundamentals, gain at least 10 to 20 pounds of muscle just for the sake of simplicity and ensuring that you actually will make gains in a focused way. You're getting rid of all the clutter. And then once you've established yourself, you bake the cake, you can start isolating it with some of these more sound exercises, right? But to tell a complete beginner, just do these new movements. I mean, it's not bad advice if their goal is hypertrophy, but are they actually going to stick to that? Or are they going to want to program hop to the next big thing? And what about the loading capacity of some of these movements? That's
a good point.
They're trying to build a cake out of icing instead of doing it the other way around. So I find that just guys are weak. And maybe if they got a bit stronger on the fundamental compounds, they wouldn't even need some of these movements to begin with. So like the iliac lat pull down, one arm at a time, that's a great exercise for the lats, no doubt. And I'm doing them as well at the moment. But if a guy can't even do 10 pull-ups, why is he then moving on to like the most optimal exercise? Why not just get stronger at something as simple as pull-ups, which won't take a lot of time? Get your 10 reps, maybe work up to 15 at some point, and then start adding weight. And you don't have to go stupid heavy. Work up to 25, 45 pounds, you know? And maybe by that point, even if the exercise is not biased enough for the lats, they're going to be content with their back development. And they'll realize, hey, I don't actually need more. I can literally just walk up to a bar, put my belt on, and I'm good to go. Or the same thing for the bench press. A guy hits 2 plates for a few repetitions and he's satisfied with his chest development. Did he really need these cross-body motions with cables or using all these specific machines? So I think first we got to get to that point to realize if we even need that stuff to begin with. And if it just so happens that, yeah, there's lagging muscles, you got to address this, great. Let's start mixing in some biomechanics. And therefore, the results would be even better. But I should also mention that you can still get an elite physique without doing any of that stuff. And we're constantly seeing this in the home gym community where guys are using the most basic equipment of all time, no problem gaining massive strength. So I think a fine balance is the way to go. And we, of course, need to eliminate black and white thinking.
Absolutely, man. No, those are all great points. And there's also ways of making the compound movements more. So say like, I don't know, you can switch like a conventional deadlift to a stiff-legged deadlift or a Romanian deadlift. I know you recently put out a video on the Romanian deadlift. You know, that's still a great compound movement. It's still a more conventional movement, but it might be, you know, you can do that instead of conventional deadlifts and build a great physique. You know, or you can elevate your heels on a back squat to get a little bit more quad activation. And there's certain things you can do with the basics to make them more, I don't know. I'm not a biomechanics expert, but maybe more isolated to or more targeted on certain tissues.
Yeah, and that's what I don't like about some of the people who talk trash about barbells, because they're literally lying to their audience. They're saying it's only about the basics exclusively, but they never talk about the variations that those entail. So that's extremely disingenuous because you just pointed out different ways of attacking the tissues. RDLs for more hamstrings. You don't have to do conventional deadlifts. No one's saying you need to do that version of the deadlift, right? And you know, you can do neutral grip pull-ups instead of the wide grip pull-up, because they're always going to talk about how that's more teres major instead of lats. Well, how hard is it to do this with your arms, you know? Or the squats, heel elevated, because these same people, and this is where I got to give credit to Coach Kasim, smart guy. He says an exercise just needs to be biased enough for growth. Straight from his mouth, the man. So if we know that to be true, why not apply that logic to the basics? It's very easy to do. And anyone who says otherwise, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And the barbell is just a tool. There's many different ways to utilize it, you know?
It's just a tool, man.
Yeah. And I can't think of, like, in particular, a couple of years ago, I had a really bad, like, I had a back issue, but I've sorted it out. I haven't had back pain in a long time. I'm feeling good. And I've recently just started doing stiff-legged deads, and they're feeling amazing. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what is the barbell alternative to a heavy hinge? I'm like, there's nothing. There's no machine. I was talking about this with Jeffrey. There's no, like, if you can't squat for whatever reason, or you hate squatting, you can hack squat, you can leg press. You know, there's other implements for this that'll work that movement pattern. But when it comes to a heavy hinge pattern, there's no machine that I know of that you can get into. There's no RDL machine in the same way. Or maybe I'm missing something.
Well, even if there was, right? Because let's say I use my belt squat machine and I put a handle attachment on it. What the hell's the difference from a movement pattern perspective?
Oh,
you're still grabbing on to a bilateral object and you're doing the motion. So it's like,
yeah,
are you really getting a different effect from the barbell itself? It's the same motion. So if we know the movement pattern itself is effective, make use of it. And of course, that'll also include things like belt squats, you know, because some guys will claim that that's not basic, when in fact it is. It's the same motion, but you're not having the weight be placed on your back. So it's still a squat at the end of the day.
The belt squat thing is interesting. I've personally never tried it just because I haven't had access to a machine or the setup. The setup has always seemed a little bit time consuming for me. If I had a home gym and I had it, like, it would be easy to set up. But
you can always do it with plyometric boxes, and I did that for a long time. It just gets hard when you hit 5 or 6 plates. Yeah, but it's still doable.
And what is the main benefit of the box or the belt squat if you're not, like, if you don't have any kind of back issues? Because usually that's like for a back, like an axial loading thing. You're trying to take a load off the spine, right?
Yeah. So even if you don't have back issues, it's still good to get additional volume without compression. And some would argue that the belt squat does put you in some degree of traction, since you're rotating the sacrum downwards and you're pulling on the discs directly. So it actually feels really good. And they're more difficult than barbell back squats. You can't use your same weights. So if I'm doing 315 for 3 sets of 10 on a back squat, I might only be able to get anywhere between 275 and 300 on the belt squat. And that's not even an over exaggeration, because you're cutting out the torso from contributing to the movement. You know, you can't low bar it. That doesn't make a difference. You're not loading the spinal rectors. It's basically all legs, and even the direction of resistance is changed, right? Depending how you do them. Now, if it's the ghetto way where you stand up on the boxes, it's going to be a similar loading pattern to the barbell back squat, like a high bar, like a super high bar, right? But if you're doing the machine, it's not exactly vertical. It's at a slight angle. And so that forward shifting is going to create a more perpendicular angle with your tibia. So just off that, you're going to feel your quads a lot more. So it's not just about reducing the axial loading, which is a massive benefit, especially if you did a lot of deadlifts prior, but it changes the joint angles a little bit, and you get more out of less weight.
Awesome. I actually want to get into that whole axial loading thing, because there are people out there that, you know, and this is something I kind of experiment as someone who did have back troubles in the past. I'm not cautious to the point where I don't want to strengthen my back, because that's actually what helped me, like strengthening my back and loading my spine in a controlled manner and progressively overloading and getting stronger. Because I feel like there's a push to you know, when it comes to the back, like if people have lower back pain or discomfort, they tend to baby it. And that's almost exactly what you don't want to do. That never helped me. Babying it didn't help me. It made it worse. And when I actually strengthened my back and didn't fear monger around the idea of loading it, that's when things started to work out for me. But there is, you know, when it comes to axial loading, I rarely do squats and deadlifts on the same day, like barbell squats and deadlifts, because it just seems like that's a lot for the low back to take in one session. I'm not saying like I couldn't take it, but you know, when people are just training the barbell movements, the whole axial loading thing can become a problem because every movement you're doing is putting load on the spine and load on the back. And I'm kind of curious, like, in your opinion, what's a good way to kind of manage your recovery and not put too much on the spine with these barbell movements?
So a couple of great points to raise. One, if your lower back is weak, you obviously got to strengthen it. Me too. I've had my issues in the past, and it wasn't laying around that fixed it. You have to actively work those ranges of motion, get some blood flow in, and get stronger over time. And that can literally be starting off with a good morning with an empty barbell, which is exactly what I did. And now I'm doing over 2 plates, no problem. So it takes time to rehabilitate, but there's always hope. Now, you just asked me, sorry, re-say the exact.
So it was the back pain. Oh, then it was the
oh yeah, sorry.
How to manage recovery.
Yeah, how do you manage? Okay. So the way that I like to do it is with movement variability. So I've always said that I'm not a fan of doing conventional deadlifts twice a week. And it's because of that reason. Unless you have advantage leverages. So really long arms, you're very much upright. You can get away with the extra frequency. But I've always found that mixing in block pulls, so you're slightly elevated when you do your hip hinge, followed by full pulls from the floor on another day, allows you to recover that much better, irrespective of the axial loading factor. So it's not necessarily the absolute load on the bar, it's the joint angles that you're put into. So like if I'm doing a high handle trap bar deadlift on Monday, and then Thursday's stiff legged deadlift, honestly, that should be fine from a recovery standpoint. Alternatively, you can do the same movement pattern, but just change the placement or implement. So here's what I mean. Monday could be a Romanian deadlift with a barbell, and Thursday could be a good morning. It's the same exercise, but the good morning will have you lifting about 40% of the weight. So you're cutting it out drastically. So the stimulus to fatigue ratio is better, but you're still going to maintain the movement pattern that does have carryover to the RDL, and therefore you're getting a great hypertrophy response. So next time you come in the gym, you should be stronger. So I always do the same motion, but add a little twist to it. This way we're either reducing axial loading or changing the angles themselves so that we don't feel as messed up. And, you know, and that could also just be switching from barbells to dumbbells.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
That all makes sense. And do you do any kind of, I know you're kind of, you're probably kind of stuck to your home gym right now. Is that your main, you don't work out in a public gym right now?
Nah, man. It's good. Probably for another month or two. Thing is, I got used to training at home. I bought this home gym in 2018, and that's usually been my default. If I go to gym, it's for very specific movements. Like back in the day, it was to use my trap bar or the cable machines. But now that I got everything over here, I mean, I don't really see the point. Plus, I got my lights. I got everything to film. But I know that people do want to see that stuff. So in a bit, I'll go back.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to film in a public gym. It's a little awkward, I can imagine.
That too, and with the pandemic, it's not fun, you know? Yeah. So, whatever.
You don't have to wear a mask in your videos.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally respect that. Do you do a lot of hack squatting or leg pressing at all, or is that not really
none? I would do pendulum hack squats if I had access to them.
Oh, that'd be
leg
epic.
press. Yeah, man. But leg press, probably not. I've done them in the past, but I feel like the belt squat gives me all the benefits I need because I won't have to use as much weight for one. Like if you're doing 3-4 plates on the belt squat for volume, you are more than golden, like for 90% of people. But the leg press, you're going to have to do like double that amount, easy. And I just find that it's more time consuming and you have to load up all these plates for nothing. So I honestly just stick to the basics with leg training. It couldn't be more simple. I do barbell back squats, SSB squats, belt squats, good mornings, RDLs, trap bar deads, variations of those, maybe with accommodating resistance.
What about unilateral training? Do you do a lot of Bulgarians?
Yeah, absolutely. That stuff is very important for, because it's, again, like, for example, when you do back squats, it does shut off the rec fem. So you would need either an isolation movement, like a leg extension to finish off your workout, or something like a sissy squat or a unilateral movement. So just off that, you're going to get more hypertrophy. And in general, these movements allow you to get more out of less weight. Oh, yeah. And it's additional volume comparable to a belt squat. So Bulgarian split squats, regular split squats, all that is fantastic.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I love Bulgarian split squats, especially, you know, to take it back to Coach Kasim, you know, he has like variations there. If your front foot is farther out, you really get that stretch. My glutes just get lit up with that variation. And then if you want to do the more quad dominant, you bring the foot back and then elevate the heel. So there's lots you can do. Like we said, man, there's like the basics. You can take the basics a long way just by the slightest variations.
Yeah, and you know, that's why you probably don't need to get, heck, even these expensive machines that people buy. I'll give you an example. The glute ham raise. That's a freaking good exercise. I love it. But you know what else is basic and time proven? Nordic leg curls. That shit is hard mode. You got to strap yourself to a bench or, you know, put a bar in the rack. But you get strong enough at those, even if it doesn't have the best resistance curve, I guarantee you're going to have some popping action back there. So there's always a way to modify something. And to what you just said about the split squats, I'd mentioned that this is one of my favorite movements for building bigger glutes. And there was a time where I was primarily doing unilateral work exclusively and weighted pull-ups. And I walked into the gym without any specific training and trap bar deadlifted 700 pounds at 165 body weight. So these people who say it doesn't make you stronger or give carryover, what the hell are you talking about? Because I certainly noticed amazing growth, which you can all see on YouTube. It's all documented, and the gains were there at a lighter body weight. So absolutely, there's a time and place for that stuff, and you can mix up the variations to bias different tissues.
When in regards to leg training, not too long ago, it might have been in a live stream, you said something about you were really lazy about your leg training for a long time. What does that mean, and why was that the case? I'm curious.
It means I did not train them at all for months at a time. Straight up, bro. Like during my 4 or 5 bench journey, I think I did like 3 or 5 leg workouts tops in that entire process. So either you don't do anything, or your frequency is so low and the training is so like subpar in terms of you don't push yourself and you're just trying to maintain that, you might as well not be training your legs at all. So it's either like the brink of maintenance or actually regressing to a certain extent. And the reason why I went down that path is because I honestly didn't care or have any desire to grow them further. Like I have pretty good legs, and on any given day I can come in and deadlift in the 500s, no matter the variation, and they're pretty aesthetic. So because I was able to get away with it and I didn't really have any goals at the time, I was like, okay, I'm just going to be fucking lazy. But I realized that was the wrong approach, because years later, I kind of low-key regret it, because I would have been a lot stronger today. Probably would have added 100 pounds to my deadlift, been squatting in the 5s, etc. And all these skinnier guys ended up surpassing me with the lower body. So I've now become an official gym bro. You know, I can bench and OHP a lot of weight, but my leg performance is not up to par whatsoever. So I would strongly recommend against that.
Cool. I appreciate the honesty.
Yeah, man.
Okay, another topic that I want to get into is something that I've kind of been changing my mind on, is the training for strength with the goal of hypertrophy. So, you know, getting stronger and progressively overloading is crucial for gaining muscle. No debate there. But how does that translate into rep ranges? You know, for me personally, I feel bound to the 8 to 12 rep range. You know, like that's the efficient hypertrophy rep range. Sometimes it's 15 to 20 if it's, you know, a curl or a lateral raise or something like that. But I rarely train under 8 reps. But now I've started, you know, Jeffrey, you, like a lot of these like natural guys, they do recommend the lower rep ranges. And there's a few things here. So the first thing is, like, am I leaving gains on the table by not training 6 reps and lower? Also, getting stronger in the 8 to 12 rep range is still getting stronger.
Exactly.
So that's also a kind of a nuanced conversation. But is there benefit to training in the lower rep ranges if your aim is strictly hypertrophy?
If it's strictly hypertrophy, I mean, we can make the argument that there might be potential pathways, or just raising your absolute strength could be enough to overcome certain plateaus that when going back to the higher zones, it's easier to make progress. That's a potential argument, but maybe that's just something that people use to justify strength training. I think if you only want to be big, it probably doesn't matter. Like, you don't have to use low reps. The cutoff point would be around 5. And what matters most in this case is proximity to failure. So if you're getting stronger in the 8 to 12 zone, and say you're between 0 and 3 reps in reserve, there's zero reason to believe why you couldn't hit your genetic limit. I mean, progressive overload is strength training on a tissue level. Like, the bigger your muscle is, the more force it could produce. And you don't have to do singles and triples to do that. Like, obviously there's a neurological component to lifting heavy weights, but a lot of powerlifters will even tell you that they're limited in many cases in terms of adding numbers to the total by their size. And oftentimes they have to up a weight class or run hypertrophy blocks. It's not just about the low reps. So if we know that you can get really far just off hypertrophy training, and that process in itself will still make you strong, then there's really no reason to believe why you gotta, you know, train like a competitive powerlifter or strongman in this respect. So, and also for the rep ranges, it depends on the movements, right? So like you said, lateral raises, you're typically going to creep it up. But I think it's more so out of preference and the fact that some movements have a limited loading potential. So if you go from 25-pound dumbbells on a lateral raise to 30 pounds, it might be a little bit hard, and your reps will drop drastically, or you're going to have a hard time holding it over here because of the strength curve. So maybe for some exercises that are more end phase loaded, so you're emphasizing the shortened position, it's going to be harder to do those lower reps. So you naturally creep it up. But it's not because it's superior. It's just you adjusting to what's imposed. And I was going to say something else. Pain tolerance. That's a big factor as well. Some guys, they won't be able to do 20 rep squats. They'll gas out when the reps in reserve is at like 5 or 6. So if you're not able to push yourself with that level of intensity with those higher reps, maybe it's a good idea not to do it. But if you are able, then fine, go right ahead. It shouldn't make a difference for gaining mass. So what you're saying is getting strong, and it doesn't necessarily matter what the rep range is. It's not just related to your 1 rep max. That's all there is to it, bro. And that's why, like, a lot of people have been confused over the years. You know, when they go on my channel, I say, you got to get stronger to get bigger. They're like, but bro, I don't do 1 rep maxes and triples and all that. And I'm like, that's not what the fuck I'm saying. You know, just get stronger in any rep range. It doesn't matter. Raise performance. That's the goal. You don't have to train like a powerlifter.
Yeah. The bottom line is progressive overload.
That's the bottom line. Yeah.
Cool, man. Cool. No, that's something I kind of wanted to clarify. It's like almost like such a simple answer, but people just overthink this.
Yeah. Even explaining it can be difficult, you know?
It's like, it's so simple, but it just, I don't know. It's it's nuanced at the same. It is
nuanced. Absolutely.
So another thing I wanted to get into is the black pill fitness. And it's something that I've seen, especially recently, is like this whole idea of, you know, the natural limit. There's genuinely people out there who think naturals can't build any size. There's genuinely people that will train for a year, maybe 2, and then think their genetics are shit. And then just be like, oh, I guess I got to hop on something to actually like achieve the body I want. So like my question to you is like, what advice would you offer guys who have taken the black pill regarding genetics and what they can achieve as a natural lifter?
I would tell them to just look at the real naturals on this platform that have been consistently grinding over the last 10 years and tell me if any of them didn't make significant progress or at least make some improvements. Because everybody who talks about the black pill, they're either, not everybody, but most of them are either enhanced. So they're using that as a way to justify their bad decisions, or it's a way of, you know, maybe they're lazy themselves and they don't want to put in the extra work. They're content on being an influencer who's in maintenance mode, and they can justify like, oh, I hit my natural limit. And maybe the next step beyond that point is justifying TRT use or just becoming enhanced in general because I paid my dues. I put in the work. It's an easy way to gain respect. But the true level of respect, if you know, is that you didn't hit your limit and you were, first of all, probably doesn't exist to begin with. And if there was, it was probably another 20 years away because you couldn't handle the fact that gains were slow. You didn't like that your bench press was only going up 10 pounds a year. Well, I'm sorry, but when you're passing out this phase, things are going to be slow. And just to say, when I started my YouTube channel in 2013, I was like in the high 200s, low 3s on the bench, like bouncy shit form, right? And it only took, well, it took till 2021 to hit 405 for one. So all those years, small freaking improvements. And when I was a teenager, I never thought I was going to get that strong, but I just stayed committed to the path and learned more about information. And that's the thing. Knowledge is potential power. And here, it will limit, the lack of knowledge will lead to plateaus and make you believe that your progress is slower than what it actually is. Or that maybe this is getting close to a limit. So in 2017, 2018, I was like, all right, I'm pretty freaking strong, but maybe I got like 50 pounds less to add on certain movements. And my progress was kind of similar to what I'm experiencing now. But now I feel like I can still add that same amount. The amount that I claimed I was going to max out on, I can do double that today. And I haven't noticed any regression for the most part. So it's like people just don't give it enough time. And they're not willing to learn what's actually going to take them to that next level. How many books have they read on strength and conditioning? Have they been, you asked me at the beginning of this podcast, what motivates you to stay? Are they really passionate about this game? Can you say that they know more in 2022 than 2021? If the answer is no, or that their info is relatively similar, then they fucked up. So you have to put yourself to a higher standard, not only in terms of like what you'll be lifting in the future, but also up here. You don't have all the answers, and there's more experts coming out constantly that are willing to help you out. And in this day and age where you have all the information at the tip of your fingertips, you can download all the videos. You can read from the best strength coaches, even get coached directly by them. Hire them for a few training cycles to get a grasp on things. There's no excuse for not making hardcore gains. And I don't care if your genetics aren't the best. Anybody who trains hard for the next 5 or 10 years under really good conditions is going to have a good physique, bottom line. And if someone argues otherwise, just show me their program. Show me the logs, and I'll prove why that's bullshit.
Well, it's a reflection of the cultural climate as well. We live in an instant gratification, victim mentality culture. You know, it's people being scared of the long-term grind or being unwilling to actually like put in a long-term. They don't understand how long it takes. And then they really don't, man. And then there's the victimhood. where it's like, oh, I can't do it because my genetics.
The victim, the victim mentality in general needs to die off. It's like, hold yourself accountable and stop blaming the world or your parents because, oh, they're the ones who gave me these genetics. Like, you're alive because of them, right? Why don't you be grateful for that? And know that, like, even when we talk about health and nutrition, 90% of diseases are lifestyle related. So you do have a lot of control. And even if you won't be as good as some other guy, you can at least take it pretty damn far. So I think it also stops. You have to stop comparing yourself to other men. You know, maybe you can use them for inspiration or some competition when you're at a specific level. Like, it's always fun. You know, you're trying to one up the boys.
Yeah.
But overall, you got to do this for you. And the grind never stops, ever.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. All right, man. I wanted to jump into bulking and cutting, and you're the first person, or one of the maybe Jeff Nippard. I can't remember who I heard it from first, but it was the bear mode thing.
Yeah.
And which I actually started off when I first like really started training bodybuilding focus and was trying to put on weight. I started at, what was I, like 170 something, 175, and I got up to 205, which is like a fair amount. And before that, I didn't really like bulk. And I've kind of noticed that there's a fear around bulking, and a lot of people kind of shit on bulking. It's all to a certain extent, or they don't really like understand what bulking is. They think it's like you trying to maintain a lean physique and also build muscle, which is not really ideal for most people. They think 20% body fat is obese. Even I thought that when I got up to 20%. I've never been high. I've never been higher than 20%. Like, usually when I get to 20%, which I just did recently, I'm actually kind of cutting down right now, trying to maintain my muscle. But let's get into that. Like, why do you think people are kind of afraid to bulk in it, and why, and like, what are the benefits of bear mode?
Well, first of all, these people who are afraid of hitting 20%, I wouldn't be surprised if they're already at it, because most greatly underestimate their body fat. So what are the benefits of bulking? Well, you get superior gains, plain and simple. And this whole idea that you have to get fat in the process is absolute nonsense. All a bulk is eating in a caloric surplus. And that could be minor if one so chooses to. You won't get additional gains by dirty bulking. Sure, your leverages might be favored and you will look bigger, but it's not fat accumulation. So if you're gaining inches on your arms in a couple months, it's not because of the surplus, right? I mean, you will gain some lean tissue there, but I'm just saying the actual appearance itself, it takes time to build muscle. And in general, eating a bit above your maintenance, it optimizes that process. And so if one wants to stay somewhat lean, keep themselves accountable, track your food just like you would on the cut, but eat a little bit above. And that's all you got to do. And the weight is going to slowly pack on over the months, and you're going to gain the most lean tissue while having the best recovery for you. And what you'll find by 6 months passing by is that you're only a little bit fluffier. It's not a crazy amount. And if you did get fat, it's because you fucked up. So let's start with that. There's the right and wrong way to bulk. Correct bulking is you eat clean foods. You don't eat pizza all the time or junk or whatever's thrown in your way. You don't give in to your temptations unless you're willing to accept the fact that you are going to gain disproportional amounts of fat. So there's that. And you just don't care that you're going to have to go through a cut after, because if you did it properly, once you lean down again, you're going to be at a heavier weight anyway because you put on a little bit of muscle mass.
Yeah.
And the net amount, when you compare bulks and cuts versus just trying to recomp all the time, you're still saving time. And that's people don't understand. And muscle memory is always going to take care of you when you come out of a depleted state to begin with. So just to say, I've been bulking for years. And when I got my bench to 405, I was 185 pounds. So quite fluffy for a short guy like me. I'm only 5'5.5". When I cut down, first of all, it only took 3 months to get down to the 160s, which is like 12% body fat, more than what 99% of people would actually want.
Sorry, how many months? How many
3
months?
months, about 3-4 months.
Cool.
I think it was 3. I even had a picture that I put up, but I know it was 3 to be in the 160. So lean enough, right? So you do the math on that. Bulk for 6 months, cut for 3, maintain all the muscle for the most part and the performance. Now, what got me screwed over was getting to a shredded status. So dropping another 20 pounds beyond that point.
Yeah.
But guess what? Even after a starving, deathly state, I literally passed out. I could have died, man. 2 months later, I'm almost peak status again. And at a significantly lighter body weight. At 170 pounds, I'm this close to a 405 bench. So 15 pounds lighter, more muscle. You tell me if it's worth it, because I didn't have to get shredded. I could have stopped. Basically, what I'm saying is I could have cut for 3 months and then bulk back up for 2. So 5 months total, be at 100% peak. And that would have been less than the 6 month total cut. So either way, when you look at it logically, even if you like go a little bit above the intended body fat, you're still going to net more muscle and it's going to be worth it. So that's why people just got to stop fearing this fat gain and know that even if you don't look the best in a fluffier state, when you cut down, you're going to look fucking amazing. The aesthetics will be there. I guarantee it. You know, and when I got really lean, people were freaking out. They didn't know I had symmetry like that. And you probably have it too. It's just hiding underneath the fat. But first, build the muscle, and then we can talk about, you know, sculpting a bit more.
Yeah, bear mode to death mode. You got super lean,
bro.
And that must be miserable. One thing I did, because I am cutting right now, so this is relevant to me. One thing, when I'm eating in a caloric surplus, I have so much energy. My recovery is great. Every day I'm hitting PRs. I'm training hard. And now that I'm cutting, it's like, to me, like, I don't know if I'm doing it a little bit too aggressive on the deficit, but it's like almost like immediate. Like my mood goes down.
Yeah.
It could be just the transition. And there's certain things I do to kind of, you know, I'm trying to eat all my carbs before I work out so that I can still train as hard as I can. But I'm not getting any weaker and I'm not regressing, but it's just so different. Like I'm not progressing in the way I am when I'm bulking.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what did you do on your cut to, you know, there's a few different schools of thought. It's like, should I do like a quick aggressive cut or should I do a long cut and try to maintain my muscle? And as like, which one is best for maintaining muscle? And I don't know, like,
yeah, that can go in a lot of different directions. But what I will say regarding fast cutting is that you're still going to gain the muscle back quickly because of muscle memory. So that needs to be stressed. You can literally do 72-hour fasts every single week. And even though you might lose a little bit more performance and size proportionally, the moment you start eating a surplus again, it's just going to balloon anyway. So does it really matter if you sped up the process that much more? And then for slow cutting, I mean, that's probably the best way to do it, but more so if you're trying to get shredded. So in this way, I would suppose it depends how lean one wants to get after a bulking phase. So if you're 20% and you want a fast cut to 15%, that's probably not a bad idea because you're still, you know, in a minorly fluffy state.
Yeah. And
just you, like everyone knows, when you go on a diet for the first time, you'll drop like 10 pounds super quickly. It's a joke. So you're getting rid of some of that water retention, and those extra pounds of body fat will immediately make you look that much leaner. So it could be done quickly in like a month or two. So if you do that, that's probably smarter than, like, you don't need a slow cut if you're at the end of a bulk, is what I'm saying. I feel like the slower route is as you get closer to single digit. And that's typically how I've done it, by the way. Usually when I'm like 185, I'll cut down to 175 like that. It'll take me like a month. And then 175 to 170 is a little bit slower. And then the 160s is super fucking slow. And then if I go beyond that point, it's like, it's going to take double the length.
It's probably miserable at that point too.
Yeah. And yeah, it's super miserable, let me tell you. So it really just depends how lean you want to get at the end of the day, in my opinion. But honestly, it can go either way. I don't think it's a huge deal because the moment you start re-eating, you're going to gain most of what you lost anyway.
So maybe there's like an irrational fear where people think immediately when they, because I've had that where I think as soon as I start eating in a calorie deficit, it's like, oh shit, all my muscles I got to make sure I eat my protein every 2 hours. Keep my, you know what I'm saying? Because you feel like you're going to lose all those hard-earned gains.
No, you won't.
But I think it's irrational.
It's overblown, man. And natty muscle is pretty easy to maintain. Like if I was able to maintain most of my leg gains without even training them hard for years, like what does that? And I went through some cuts too. What does that say about losing, your results? It's going to happen a lot slower than most people realize, and that's real talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. That makes me feel a little bit better. And I don't plan on going that low because I don't have I don't have any interest to be anything like even 12%. I think I might try to get to 12%.
Oh, 12 is fantastic. You don't need below that, man.
No. And I don't have any ambitions to be like I don't have any ambitions to be a bodybuilder competitor or anything like that. I just do this as like a lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's just what I enjoy.
Of course. And if we're talking about lifestyle, you want to have a sustainable body fat percentage. Mm-hmm. Being shredded all the time is very difficult to maintain. Not only in terms of the way you feel, but the portions you got to consume. You're eating like a sedentary male despite having all this muscle. That sucks.
Yeah. No. And I care a lot about athletics as well, which is something you've actually I watched your video. You might have put it out like a couple years ago, but it was titled Cardio is Normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. That one's, I don't know how old that is now, but I found your stuff by just watching like cardio videos and stuff. And
wow. I'm surprised.
No, I've listened to you for a long time, but I just kind of like, I found a bunch of your cardio videos after looking it up. And, a lot of people are afraid of cardio. Mm-hmm. And people will say it's not like on one side, there's a lot of people that are you go to your local gym and there's like 100 people on the treadmills and all they do is cardio. And like, I definitely get that. But then you have the bros over here who, that meme you posted in your video, like cardio, is that Spanish? It's fucking true though, man. Like people who bodybuild and powerlift, they go, ugh, cardio. They like spit on it. They hate it. But I ran a mile after not doing any cardio and just doing the bodybuilding stuff. And I was fucking gassed. When I started doing even like quicker reps or any kind of training that got my heart rate up. And it was like, dude, I am not fit. Like, yeah, sure. I'm bodybuilding and I'm getting, bigger muscles, but like my heart, like I got to start working on this shit. And I've started implementing cardio and immediately like the cardio gains are
happens fast, man.
Yeah. And I'm like running around the block. I'm running like, nothing crazy. Like I can run 5 kilometers and I feel good.
That's good.
At a decent pace. And I'm not like tired and stuff like that. And I'm curious how much cardio, because obviously there's a truth, like cardio can affect your recovery. And if you're doing too much, it's hard to maintain a surplus, whatever. But what does like a healthy dose of cardio look like to you?
Well, first of all, I'll say the data is pretty clear that low intensity cardio is really good for your long-term health. And it's like you said just now, if you're doing all this bodybuilding training, but then you're gassed after running a mile, could you really say that you're fit? You adapted to weight training. You're good at those sessions, but your endurance and just stamina as a whole is absolute garbage in that case. So you want to build up to the point where you can do a 5 to 10K run at a bare minimum. That's a good standard. And we don't have to do marathons. So the cutoff point, if we just look at what, some guys like Dr. Greger would recommend, 90 minutes of cardio a day. That's every day. That's where you can push it and realistically be fine. And in 2019, I actually ran every day for 6 months straight. And that was one of my best years of gains. The only time I had issues was when I struggled to re-eat the calories. So I ended up unintentionally cutting. But then you have to ask, was it the cardio or the diet? And I think the answer is pretty clear because the moment I started eating more food again, cardio didn't change, performance went up. So I would also say that, let's say cardio theoretically hurts your gains a little bit. Can anyone quantify what that is? How much of a percentage? Is it going to be 5 to 7%? I don't see it being more than 10. And that trade-off, if it is true, in my opinion, is still worth it, because this is the fitness community. You either care about your long-term health or you don't. Mm-hmm. So I would say, who gives a flying fuck if cardio kills a slight amount of gains? Yeah. That's my response. And it's going to take a lot of cardio to get to that point to begin with, like a brutal freaking amount. And unless you're a competitive athlete who has to be so specifically dialed in, which is not 99% of people, you shouldn't worry about this. Like, no one's going to have trouble building up to a 405 squat if they're doing jogging outside. And to that, I would also say the stronger your legs get, the easier it is to recover from low intensity cardio, because those small little steps that you're taking don't do shit to your legs. You can, it's a joke. The percentage of your 1 rep max is so low, and you're so far off from hitting failure in your legs that it's fine. And if you use a proper like running technique, for example, you're good. And even things like cycling, some guys will do that as movement prep before a workout. I know Bald Omni Man is really big on this, to warm up your hips and your knees. So you go on the bike, just rep it out. So I would also say work capacity could be enhanced from cardio. So if anything, like besides health and all that, it's going to allow you to push yourself harder in the gym or be less taxed when you're doing higher reps. You can do a longer workout and not feel completely dead. So that's absolutely my response.
What about just joint recovery and stuff like that? Say you're running and your knees are getting like
then that's overuse, which is the number one cause of injury for lifting and cardio. So at that point, you just got to adjust your program. Maybe some days you can go more intense with the cardio, other days you go lighter, or you change the activity itself. Not every day has to be a run. You can alternate between running, swimming, biking, or you could do burpee workouts. Heck, it could be any form of conditioning, just dragging a sled, but do something besides just your barbell stuff. Yeah.
What about, I used to do some kettlebell stuff back in the day. I don't do it as much, but what about, kettlebell swings?
Yeah, that's fantastic, man.
And that might be a good way for me. I was kind of thinking about this today, like to really help with my cut is just adding more activity so I can eat a little bit
100%.
more. And
that's
like maybe in my leg days, after my leg days, I hit like a few rounds of kettlebell swings. That might be a good way to do it.
Yeah. Do like 50 rep kettlebell swings or do a kettlebell down workout.
Yeah.
A good one is you pyramid up and down with kettlebells, supersetted with burpees. Now that's going to wreck you, let me tell you.
Yeah, that's probably probably a half hour of running in 2 minutes.
Yeah, and actually I did experiment with some of those workouts during my recent cut. And it got me so fit, bro, that like I didn't do any running for like a month. I was only doing those kettlebell stuff and the burpees. On a random day, I decided to run outside, and I went over an hour straight without being gassed out. I was like, holy fuck.
Sprinting.
Dude. So no one's saying you got to run, just to say, like, find cardio you enjoy and just stick to it. And you should still have a general base. So what we're saying here is, if you can't perform in a general sense, like you're completely gassed out, then your weight training is obviously not working. But if your kettlebell swings allow you to still run for half an hour or whatever, then great, do it.
Awesome, man. No, I appreciate that. I think that the, it's the health and fitness industry, but I feel like the health has kind of been taken out. Like you're
pushed aside. Yeah.
You're trying to put the health back into it, like even just with it, when it comes to nutrition, cardio, and having an overall like holistic approach to this whole thing.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Rather than just, like hopping on drugs and trying to look a certain way, because obviously there's health consequences there that I think people got to take a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, it's disgusting that the fitness industry is not even about fitness. It's all superficial, looks based, and drug infested. And the message is so far off from what most people need to be hearing. But that's why I'm trying to do my best to just preach health and longevity in this game.
No, absolutely, man. I appreciate it. We're over an hour now. So if you want to let everybody know where they can find you, that'd be great.
Well, first of all, thank you again for having me on, Damien. It was an absolute joy, and you're a great host. So if people want to reach me, they can do so on the Alpha Destiny YouTube channel or my Instagram account at OutAlpha.
Sounds good, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Oh, thank you, man.